Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Miles. Some marriages don't end with shouting or dramatic discoveries. Sometimes they end quietly. Distance builds little by little. Missed conversations, minor frustrations, nights spent apart even while living under the same roof, until one single moment finally forces you to see the truth. For me, that moment was my wife forgetting my birthday completely while spending the entire day with another man. A coworker. Hialoa. That was when everything snapped into focus. It made me realize what had been obvious for months. She had already checked out of our marriage, and I was the only one still trying to pretend things were fixable. Ivy and I had been married for many years by then. We started with real connection and hope, but slowly faded into a relationship held together only by routine. We weren't partners anymore, just two people who happened to live in the same space, sharing nothing but bills and silence. We met when I was 26 and working in a mid-sized company, and Ivy was a project manager at another firm. We clicked right away, and within weeks, we were going on dates. Everything moved forward naturally. We became exclusive, met each other's families, and moved in together after a year. 2 years after we met, we got married. The wedding was perfect, a small ceremony followed by a honeymoon in Hawaii. When we came back, we settled in and started building what we thought would be a strong, modern partnership. The first few years really were good. We shared values, supported each other's ambitions, had fun together, and surrounded ourselves with a great group of friends. It felt stable and promising. But slowly, problems began to appear. Just minor conflicts that we never actually solved. We would fight briefly, then avoid talking about it, hoping it would disappear on its own. It never did. We were both ambitious, both working long hours, and both carrying stress home from the office. That stress shaped how we spoke to each other. Sometimes one sharp comment at the wrong moment turned into an evening of cold silence. Sometimes days would pass without a real conversation. Resentment built up on both sides. Ivy said I was always buried in work, canceling plans, ignoring her, even when I was physically present. I felt attacked and misunderstood. To me, she was just as busy and career-driven as I was. When she complained about my long hours, I pointed out her own. These arguments went in circles, same topics, same frustrations, just different dates. We weren't listening. We weren't changing. We weren't apologizing. We were drifting, and neither of us noticed how far apart we'd already grown. By the 5th year of our marriage, a clear pattern had formed. We would argue, then stop talking for a day or two. After that, we would return to normal routines without ever addressing the real problem beneath the surface. Everything would seem fine for a while, until something small triggered the same fight all over again. But around the 6th year, something changed more profoundly. The arguments didn't just feel repetitive anymore. They felt empty. It was like Ivy was slowly pulling back from the relationship in ways I couldn't ignore. Even when we fought, she didn't fight with me anymore. She seemed distant, like she had already checked out. She stopped starting meaningful conversations. Our communication turned into nothing more than basic updates. Who was picking up groceries, which bills needed to be paid, and what time we had to leave for appointments. We barely talked about our feelings, dreams, or even the simple things that used to make us laugh. There was no emotional closeness, no interest in each other's inner worlds. She also began spending a lot more time at work. She often texted to say she would be home late because of deadlines or team dinners. Some mornings she left for meetings earlier than usual. And many weekends, she claimed she had urgent tasks that required extra hours. It felt like our home had become a place she visited, not where she lived. Our sex life slowly disappeared. We went from being intimate regularly to once every few weeks, and then to almost nothing at all. Whenever I tried to be affectionate or initiate something, Ivy would say she was tired, stressed, or simply not in the mood. She always promised, "We'll reconnect soon," but that moment never came. I convinced myself that it was just a difficult phase, and we simply needed time to get back on track. We had survived challenges before, so I believed we could survive this too. But deep down, I felt something different. The distance between us didn't feel accidental or temporary. It felt deliberate, like Ivy was slowly and intentionally pulling herself away from me. My 34th birthday was coming up, and even though things between Ivy and me had been tense for months, I still wanted the day to feel special. I wanted our marriage to feel normal again. A part of me hoped that Ivy would make some kind of effort. Maybe she'd plan something small or at least acknowledge the day. I expected my birthday might be a moment to reconnect after all this distance. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up feeling cautiously hopeful. At the very least, I expected a simple happy birthday for my wife. Just some sign that she remembered. Ivy was already up, moving around the bedroom. She seemed hurried, almost like she was running late. She dressed, fixing her hair, applying her makeup with slow, focused attention, and choosing her outfit. The whole time, she didn't mention my birthday, not even in passing. I kept waiting for her to turn and smile at me, to say the simple words I had been expecting. But she acted like it was any other ordinary morning. When she finally left the house, it was with a quick, distracted goodbye. No keys, no worms, no birthday wish. Just the exact rush departure I had gotten used to. I tried not to make it a big deal. Things had been rough between us. Maybe she honestly forgot. I tried to be understanding, even though the silence stung more than I wanted to admit. I got ready for work and headed to the office, doing my best to shake off the disappointment. Throughout the morning, my phone buzzed with birthday messages. Friends texted. My siblings called. Even coworkers stopped by my desk after seeing the date on the office calendar. Everyone remembered, except the one person who should have meant the most. Nothing from Ivy. No call. No text. Not even a short happy birthday. As the hours passed, my mild disappointment began turning into real hurt. How does someone forget their spouse's birthday? And even if she forgot in the morning, how do you go half a day without realizing it? Without sending even a quick message? Around lunchtime, I decided I wasn't going to let the day fall apart. I would be the one to try. I would make the effort to bring us closer, even if she seemed uninterested. Maybe taking the first step would help us rebuild what we were losing. So I made a dinner reservation at Ivy's favorite Italian restaurant, a place she loved. I imagined surprising her after work, hoping it might spark some warmth again. In the early afternoon, I called her to coordinate. Her phone went to voicemail. That wasn't unusual. She was often stuck in meetings. I called again an hour later. This time it rang, but she didn't answer. Not alarming yet, but it added to the uneasiness I had been feeling. Around 3 o'clock, my boss stopped by my desk and wished me a happy birthday and asked about my plans for the day. I told him I planned to have a quiet evening with Ivy. He insisted I leave early, saying birthdays mattered more than work, and that time with family shouldn't be pushed aside. I was grateful. It felt like the universe was giving me one last chance to save the day. I decided to surprise Ivy at her office and see if I could take her out early before our reservation. I left around 3:30, bought a bouquet of flowers on the way, and drove downtown to her office. I pictured the look on her face when she saw me, shocked at first, then smiling. I wanted that smile so badly. But even as I drove, a small knot of worry tightened in my chest. She still hadn't called. Not once. Not all day. On my birthday. I pushed the thought away and focused on the evening I hoped for. I arrived at her office building around 4. Walked into the lobby with the flowers in my hand, feeling a little silly, but also proud of myself for trying. I went to the front desk, where I'd spoken to the receptionist many times before. I asked if Ivy was available and if I could go up to surprise her. The receptionist blinked, confused. She checked her computer and said casually, "Oh, Ivy didn't come in today. She called out this morning." My stomach dropped. Everything inside me went cold. I replayed the morning instantly. How carefully she got dressed, how focused she looked, how she said goodbye like she was heading to work. Nothing about her behavior suggested she was taking the day off. If she wasn't at work, where had she been? I thanked the receptionist and walked back to my car in a daze. I sat there in the parking garage, trying to understand. She had lied. She had left the house, dressed for work, but she had gone somewhere else entirely. On my birthday, after ignoring me all day, with her phone unreachable, I couldn't avoid the thoughts anymore. The distance, the coldness, the late nights at work, the lack of intimacy, the emotional wall she'd built. Was Ivy seeing someone else? Was that where she'd been today? Was that what had been happening for months? I didn't want to believe it. I tried to find an innocent reason, but I couldn't think of one that explained all of this. I drove home in silence, my mind spinning. Every scenario felt worse than the last. I tried calling her again. Straight to voicemail. Like her phone wasn't even on. I got home a little after 5. The condo was empty and silent. No note. No message. Nothing. I sat in the living room as the sun went down, holding the flowers I had bought for her. I waited for my wife to come home so she could explain where she had been all day and why she had lied about going to work. Ivy finally came home around 7:30 that evening. She walked in calmly, like nothing was unusual. She didn't look surprised to see me sitting there. She didn't mention my birthday. She didn't explain where she'd been all day. She just put down her bag and started her regular evening routine, as if this were any ordinary night. I watched her for a few seconds. It was like I was looking at someone I barely knew, someone who looked like my wife, but didn't act like her. I asked quietly, trying not to sound angry, "Did you see my calls today?" She barely looked up while kicking off her shoes. She said her phone had been on silent, that work had been crazy, and that she had been too busy to check any messages. So I asked again more directly, "Where were you today?" She told me she'd been at work. She said she had back-to-back meetings all day, and that was why she couldn't answer her phone. I paused for a moment. Then I said, "I went to your office this afternoon. The receptionist told me you called out this morning. She said you didn't come in at all today." Ivy froze. She suddenly stopped moving. Her face went through several emotions in a few seconds: shock, fear, and then something like calculation. She clearly hadn't expected me actually to check. She didn't have a backup excuse ready. But instead of admitting the truth or apologizing, she got defensive. Her voice sharpened as she snapped. "So now you're monitoring me? You're checking up on me? Going to my office to keep tabs on me? Why?" The shift was instant. She turned her lie into an accusation against me. Somehow, I became the problem in discovering the truth. And in that moment, something inside me became painfully clear. The marriage was already over. It had been dying for months while I kept hoping to save it. Ivy showed no fear of losing me. No guilt. No sadness. She was angrier about being caught than she was about lying. She didn't even remember it was my birthday. I said quietly, almost without emotion, "I think this marriage is over." I expected her to react, maybe argue, cry, or show some sign that our marriage meant something to her. Instead, she just looked at me with a cold expression, then turned and walked away. She went to our bedroom and closed the door without saying a single word. That night, I slept on the couch, realizing that my marriage had ended on my birthday. It was a painful realization. The next morning, Ivy walked out of the bedroom, got ready for work, and left without mentioning a word about what had happened the night before. No conversation. No effort. She acted like nothing significant had happened. Her complete lack of concern made everything clearer. I wasn't ending a healthy marriage. I was simply accepting a truth that had been there for a long time. Ivy had checked out of the marriage a month ago. She just hadn't bothered to tell me. So that morning, I called a divorce attorney, someone a colleague had recommended. I booked a consultation for later that week. When I met the attorney in her office, I told her I wanted to divorce, but didn't know the best way to handle it. The attorney was calm and direct. She explained that I didn't need to prove infidelity to get divorced. But she also said that if I suspected Ivy was having an affair, hiring a private investigator might help uncover the truth. Not because it would change the legal outcome much, but because it would give me clarity and prevent Ivy from twisting facts later. I agreed. The attorney connected me with a private investigator she trusted. I met the investigator that same week and told him that I am hiring him to watch my wife I plan to divorce and gather information. About 4 weeks after my birthday, I filed for divorce. My attorney handled the paperwork and arranged for Ivy to be served while I was at work. I didn't want to face the confrontation directly. Ivy called me about an hour after receiving the papers. She sounded irritated, angry, and not remorseful. She demanded to know why I was doing this. She said I was overreacting. She claimed I misunderstood everything about my birthday. I asked again clearly, "Where were you that day? If you weren't at work, where did you go?" She paused. Then she admitted she hadn't been at the office. She said she had an off-site meeting with a coworker. She said it was last minute, that she forgot to tell me, that her phone died, that it was all just a series of innocent mistakes. The lie was too smooth, too practiced. It made me realize she had done this before. She was comfortable lying. She had excuses ready for any situation. I told her that from now on, we would talk only through our attorneys. I said I didn't want more explanations. The marriage was over, no matter where she had been that day. She changed tactics and said I was acting paranoid, that I was throwing away 6 years for nothing, that I would regret it. The gaslighting was obvious. She was trying to make my reasonable reaction seem like irrational panic. I ended the call feeling sick. I realized this pattern had probably repeated itself many times over the past year. Her lying, me sensing something was wrong, her turning it around on me, and me doubting myself. The private investigator worked for almost 6 weeks. During that time, he quietly followed Ivy everywhere she went. He took notes on her daily routine, kept records of what she did, and even took photos when needed. When he finally handed me his report, the results were painful, but not shocking. There were several hotel check-ins with the same male coworker. Long, comfortable lunches with him at restaurants all over the city. It was clear that nights when she told me she was working late, but she was actually at his apartment. It wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a pattern. A well-organized lie that had clearly been going on for months. The timeline the investigator built showed something important. The affair had likely begun about 10 months earlier. Suddenly, everything clicked. She didn't need intimacy from me anymore because she was getting it somewhere else. Her frequent irritation. She was stressed from juggling a secret relationship while pretending to be a loyal wife. The emotional distance. She had already invested her heart in another man. Even my birthday, the day everything finally hit me, wasn't special in her affair timeline. It was just another day. She chose him over me. Another day. She decided on secrecy over honesty. Another day, she let our marriage fall apart while she built something new behind my back. The divorce process lasted several months. Washington State's community property laws made splitting our belongings fairly straightforward. We had both worked throughout the marriage, earned similar incomes, and didn't have huge assets. In the end, we divided everything almost evenly without a big fight. What hurt most was that Ivy never admitted anything, not even when I showed her the investigator's photos. She stuck to her stories about late meetings and harmless lunches, acting as if I were paranoid or unreasonable for asking questions. She lied even when the truth was right in front of both of us. Her refusal to be honest during the divorce was, in some ways, more painful than the affair itself. She couldn't even give me the basic respect of the truth while our marriage was ending. She carried her lies all the way to the finish line. The divorce was finalized about 8 months after my birthday. By the following summer, we were legally separated, and the marriage was over. I never got closure from Ivy. No honest talk, no genuine apology, no acknowledgement of the damage she caused. Just more denial, more gaslighting, more pretending until we officially had no reason to speak anymore. But even with the truth in my hands, the pain didn't magically disappear. It didn't erase the months of being lied to. It didn't undo the betrayal or fix the damage done to my ability to trust. Looking back now, years later, I see things more clearly. I understand that most marriages don't collapse in one big, dramatic moment. They usually fall apart slowly, piece by piece. That's what happened with Ivy and me. Our marriage didn't end because of one affair. It ended because of all the little arguments we never fixed, the growing distance we ignored, and the silence that built up between us. The cheating was not the cause. It was only the final sign of a relationship that had already been dying. I also learned that when someone has emotionally checked out of a relationship, they become very good at lying. Ivy's calm answers, her excuses, her quick explanations, they came from months of practice. She had built an entire routine for living a double life. Betrayal doesn't happen by accident. It takes planning, secrecy, and a kind of coldness that slowly changes a person. I learned that trying to get the truth from someone who no longer cares about you is pointless. All the times I begged Ivy for honesty never worked. She had already disconnected from our marriage long before I found out the truth. People who have stopped loving you don't suddenly become honest just because you confront them. I learned how damaging gaslighting is. Ivy made me question my own memory, my own instincts, my own sense of reality. She lied so consistently that I started doubting myself. Recovering from that has taken time. I've had to slowly rebuild confidence in my own judgment. Most of all, I learned that being alone is far better than being with someone who has already left you emotionally. The months I spent trying to save the marriage, while she was secretly destroying it, were the loneliest months of my life. True loneliness isn't living alone. It's sleeping beside someone who has already abandoned you in their heart. I've made peace with how things ended. I know now that I couldn't have saved a relationship with someone who betrayed me so deeply and never showed genuine remorse. The marriage was over long before the divorce. Filing the papers was just admitting the truth. My life is completely different now. I live alone in a smaller apartment, the place I moved into after selling the condo Ivy and I shared. This new space is quiet, but it's mine. Every corner reflects me, not us. Nothing inside reminds me of the pain I went through. I haven't dated seriously since the divorce. I've gone on a few casual dates, but nothing has turned into a real relationship. I'm still careful, still guarding myself, still learning how to trust again. But I'm not closed off. I know that one day I can have a healthy relationship with the right person, someone honest, someone steady, someone who means what they say. I'm not bitter about love. I'm just wiser about who I let close to me. I know now that I deserved loyalty. I deserved honesty. I deserved a partner who cared enough to work through our problems instead of running into someone else's arms while pretending everything was fine. Please tell me what you would have done if you found yourself in a situation like this. How would you react? What decision would you make? I want to understand how someone else might handle such a difficult moment.